Monday, August 14th, and this is Geeknights. Tonight, after an almost 2-week hiatus, we bring you our live podcasting panel from Otakon 2006.
Let's do this.
Well, after almost 2 weeks of hiatus, Geeknights is back.
Beware, we live.
We hunger.
Run, coward, run, run, run.
See, I thought about putting the actual WAV files in, but that was so much more fun.
Yeah, I guess. You can put them in near the end of the episode for funnies.
Or randomly throughout.
Ooh, also funnies.
But anyway, for anyone who isn't aware, meaning mostly people who may be new listeners, since we seem to have a lot of you, we were at Otakon and Wildwood and Atlantic City and Beacon for the last 2 weeks, pretty much.
Collecting content for podcasting.
We have enough content to do the next 3 weeks handily at this point.
I'd say we have enough content to do the next 3 months handily.
Now, instead of doing 1 or 2 massive episodes or going really long all week, the plan is that we're just going to use all of these stories from Otakon and the Week of Awesome throughout the next several weeks as we see fit.
Which means you're in store for many entertaining episodes of Geeknights, instead of one incredibly stupid long one.
Now, for all of you who are looking for our Otakon coverage or all of that business, we are going to have our main Otakon Con report this Wednesday on Anime Manga Comics Day.
Tomorrow we're going to talk about just the gaming that we did over the past 2 weeks, I think, right?
Yep, which was mostly the gaming room at the con that we did check out and play a bunch of games in, and then playing DDR for pretty much 3 days non-stop in Wildwood.
We also played some D&D for a bit.
Sure, we did, a bit.
But we fell asleep.
Right about
late.
halfway through the one-shot.
Yeah.
Right after we fought and failed to kill that dragon.
Good job. Thursday, we will reveal the new motto of the Front Row Crew.
Yes, we will have to give mad props to the 2 people who are somewhat together responsible for the new motto of the Front Row Crew. But suffice to say, we enacted the motto to its fullest. And we have done not one, but 2 dumb things that are going to be all over the internet, I guarantee it.
Hopefully we can use the incredible internet popularity of the dumb things we have done to bring in new listeners. I
mean, honestly, we did these things, they're the kind of things we would do anyway, and we found them hilarious. But then afterward, we realized that they're exactly the things we always see on Boing Boing.
Yeah, they're
pretty much.
I mean, the other day I was going around the internet and I saw a link to a blog story about LEET license plates. Hello, I have a LEET license plate.
You have the most basic LEET license plate.
And why wasn't I on there? What the hell?
You're also in one of the most populous states.
Yeah.
The fact that no one got that before you.
I guess. Oh well, I was neglected. But we will generate 2 awesomes to counteract my lack of LEET license plate knowing.
Now, if you notice that I particularly sound a lot different than usual, one, we completely lost our voices at Otakon, as in Scott and I could not talk at all.
Now, today, what we have for you is actually a recording of our Otakon panel, which was Sunday morning. Now, we lost our voices sometime around the middle of Saturday.
Yes, we drugged ourselves with Halls and menthol in order to actually do the show, and it was painful. As in, the moment the panel was over, I couldn't talk at all anymore.
Yes, so thanks to the Halls of Medicine, we did our panel and thus destroyed our throats and vocal cords, which is part of the reason why the panel is going to sound bad.
Now, additionally, we'll talk about the rest of the problems with the panel recording when we actually play it.
Yeah.
Additionally, you might notice that I sound different because my pop filter, which I brought to Otakon to show to all of the other podcasters we were
His nice homemade embroidery loop.
Yes, the one
filter.
that was featured on the Creative Mom podcast.
The same.
It has been lost somewhere. Therefore, I'm currently angling the microphone oddly in order to minimize the popping that I normally make.
Good job.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to stop somewhere and buy a new pop filter sometime soon.
Yeah, we'll probably buy those new microphones that the audio guy at Otakon told us to get, and then we'll buy pop filters for them.
Yes, also,
or buy more embroidery loops.
Also, the fact that the audio guy at Otakon laughed at our mixer, we're going to upgrade the mixer.
Yeah. Especially since there's nothing really wrong with the mixer itself, except it doesn't have enough holes.
We used all of them at Otakon.
Yep.
In fact, we've recorded a whole bunch of awesome interviews that are going to be played all week. We also survived an assassination attempt, which will be... We actually have audio of that, which will be played at some point in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, probably a week from Wednesday, I'm guessing.
Fucking clown pistols.
Oh, my God. All right.
All right, anyway, to not go too on about all of our crazy stuff, that'll come during the week. We have the news, as usual.
Wow, there was a lot of news in the past 2 weeks that we didn't talk about at all. And you know what? I didn't even bother to go back on Dig to see every news story of the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I basically just picked out the one that kind of stood out in my head, and...
Yeah, this is the time when podcasts like Twit come in handy, because they're weekly. They just summarize the whole week. So listening to 2 Twits today, I was completely caught up.
Even though that's what all of you seem to want us to turn Geeknights into.
Yeah, it's like, what? If you want to listen to Twit, seriously, just listen to Twit.
I do note that most of the people who suggest that said that they like us more than they like Twit.
Some of the people, yeah, but how come Twit has a hojillion listeners and we don't?
We'll get on that.
Yeah.
All right, so mine's real simple because I don't think I need to do much commentary on this. This is pretty obvious. Now,
self-explanatory.
Sony kind of sucks, and Blu-ray has pretty much been a train wreck from the start.
A day.
Now, recently, the Blu-ray drives, the first of the Blu-ray drives, have come out. And, all right, cool. It came to the attention of the internet that these drives cannot actually play commercially released Blu-ray discs due to problems with the copyright and DRM stuff, and as well due to problems with the software and the fact that HDCP does not really work on computers yet.
Well, basically, the way it is, you buy a Blu-ray drive for your computer because you want to burn Blu-ray discs, play Blu-ray movies on your computer, whatever you want to do.
Store data on them because they're marginally larger
Maybe
than
you
DVDs.
have a Blu-ray disc and you want to play, you want to get data off of it. It's a data Blu-ray disc and put it on your computer.
Except no one has those yet. The only Blu-ray discs are commercially released movies that don't work on the only drives that exist.
Right. Now, the drive can play the movies. But what it does is it requires that you have this DRM called HDCP, which is high definition content protection, in your video card, and I think even in your monitor, right?
Yes. Now, to the best of my knowledge, unless something's changed or I haven't Googled around too closely, there don't appear to be any video cards that have HDCP support.
There were many that said they had HDCP support or were HDCP ready, but none of them actually were.
Yeah, so if you want a Blu-ray drive, don't buy one. They don't work.
Well, you can buy one as long as you know that in the future you're going to have to buy a new video card that has this DRM in it and a new monitor that has this DRM in it.
If that even comes to pass, or if they don't change HDCP, or if they don't just completely redo the format, or all the other possible problems.
Yeah, it's like you need to have a video card that has DRM, a monitor that has DRM, a special cable, and then this Blu-ray drive. And some of those things exist, and some of those things don't, or at least they're not all commercially available. Therefore, effectively, the Blu-ray drive for your computer cannot play Blu-ray movies.
So I hate to beat a dead horse, and I'm really not gonna talk about Blu-ray again because it's kind of like Jack Thompson. I only talk about Blu-ray or Jack Thompson if they top themselves somehow. And
There's been a lot of Jack Thompson lately, but it's nothing out of the ordinary.
It's nothing new. He's just been in the news more.
Yeah.
He would have to pretty much kill a baby for me to talk about him.
Didn't he?
Yeah, but I'm pretty much 90% certain that Blu-ray as a format is going to fail. And that I was about 80% certain until this news came out. So we'll see if anything can make that percentage ever go down again.
We'll see. All right, so also in the news, what was my news again?
Good job.
Good job.
We finally get back after 2-week hiatus.
I just reminded myself like 2 minutes ago of what it was. Oh, right, the RIAA.
Oh, they exist.
Oh, yeah, they're still around doing stupid shit.
And they're suing people, as always.
So they sued this guy, and while they were suing this guy, he died.
He suddenly died of an aneurysm.
Yep. So they said, "Aw, shit. How are we going to sue a dead man?"
You know what? They're going to sue a dead man. They're continuing with the lawsuit, and they're forcing the family, the bereaved family, including the man's children, to submit depositions so that they can then prosecute and then extract money from his estate.
Yep. So they basically said, all right, the guy died. We'll give you 60 days to mourn. On the 61st day, we want you to come in and give depositions so that we can take his money.
I don't know what to say to that. That's the worst PR move in the world. I mean, they've already sued old ladies, young kids, single moms, college students, and now they're suing a dead man and they're making his children testify against it.
Well, I mean, think about this. Let's say you had a legitimate lawsuit against someone, like a really legitimate one. Say, I don't know, what's something you would sue someone
You stole
over?
$1 million from me straight up by violating a contract, and then you died.
There you go.
I should be able to get that money back.
You should. But sometimes, if it's not a big deal, even though you have a legitimate case, you'll let it go because the guy died.
Yeah, I mean, the RIAA obviously is not suing people to get money. Getting money is just a byproduct. They're suing people in order to scare people into not downloading things, which isn't working at all. 2, they've never actually won a lawsuit. They just get people to settle, and everyone who's ever fought them has won. And 3, they're not going to scare any more people by continuing to sue this dead daddy. All they're going to do is piss more people off.
All I can hope is that because of the attention brought to this case of where the guy died, that some of those lawyers who won cases for other people will go help these people prevent the RIAA from taking money from the estate. Because I'm thinking what the RIAA is thinking is that, hey, look, there's an estate and no one to defend it. Maybe we can loot it. And they won't feel bad because they're looting a dead man who isn't there to care.
I don't think they're thinking that at all. I think very simply they'll just sue anyone they have a case against.
I don't know.
And then if the person fights back, they'll probably just immediately drop the suit, as they tend to do.
Whatever. They're evil. They're more evil. Every day, they haven't let up,
Wow, so the news today was Sony is incompetent and the RIAA is evil.
Seems like nothing much changed while we were away for 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Things of the past 2 weeks.
Things of the day.
Oh,
All right,
yeah.
for all of our new listeners, we're not going to annoy all of our current listeners as we have in the past when we get a bunch of new listeners by explaining the entire show every day for an entire week. But I think it warrants explanation that what we're about to do is something we do. It's a bit on every show where we show you and then talk about whatever thing we found on the internet in the last 24 hours that was awesome enough to share with anyone on the internet.
It's probably something you've already seen if you're the type of person who reads lots of websites like Dig and Slash.
However,
and Far.
many of our listeners do not do these things, and they're often new. And sometimes our listeners send us things that we have not seen.
Very rarely.
Maybe once or twice ever. Though actually, over the Week of Awesome, which actually we'll talk about in great detail on Thursday because that's where all the hijinks took place, our friend showed us a good number of things that we had missed over the course of the internet that we are now going to share.
Yep. And, sometimes, I think the real point of the thing of the day is that we're going to tell you about cool things on the internet that you'll probably find out about in a couple weeks. But since you find out about them now, you kind of keep pace with us a little bit.
Plus, you get all of our witty commentary.
Yeah, it's really all about the witty commentary.
So this video, I forget who exactly showed it to us. It was either Jess or Yuko, I believe. I don't actually remember because I walked into the room and it was playing. It's called Dad's Home. And it is this cute, awesome animation. Kind of reminds me of the Perry Bible Fellowship.
Yeah.
And it's just a father comes home and goes on a destructive rampage. And then he saves the day by rocking out hard. I can't describe it any other way other than that it is exactly my kind of humor.
Wow, that was some witty commentary. It's so worth listening to this show because they couldn't have figured that out just by watching it.
Well, the thing is, it's that humor that's kind of offbeat and hard to follow. Like, the guy's head catches on fire randomly, and then self-referentially.
And then he gets laser eyes for no reason.
So, one, if you're a fan of the Perry Bible Fellowship, watch this video.
If you're not a fan of Perry Bible Fellowship, go read it.
If you like this video, go read the Perry Bible Fellowship.
Go read the Perry Bible Fellowship no matter what. If you can read the English language. Even if you can't read the English language.
Though on a completely side note that I'll talk about again whenever we do play back our webcomic roundtable that we did at Otakon, I might have added a new webcomic to my list of webcomics.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because I've met Michael Mookie. I don't know, actually, I'd never known his last name until just now when I'm looking at the book in front of me. But Dominic Deegan, Oracle for Hire, I'd never read. I just kind of knew the guy who wrote it, as in I ran into him at cons all the time. And Yuko gave me the book of the first, season of his webcomic, and I think for the first time since Dr. McNinja, I'm going to read a new webcomic.
Dun, dun, dun.
I only thought of that because of Perry Bible Fellowship.
I think it's a good enough time to say mad props to the Dr. McNinja cosplayer at Otakon.
Oh, yes.
I think I was the only one who recognized his costume because I walked up to him like, "Are you Dr. McNinja?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And we shook hands and it was all a good time.
Yep, he reacted exactly the way he should have.
There was a picture of him in my Flickr, so you can go check that out.
Definitely go. In fact, go check out the Flickr, and you might be able to surmise some of the things that have gone on that we're going to be talking about over the next 2 weeks.
You'll probably be able to surmise more from our friends' Flickrs than from ours because I don't take very many pictures.
Yeah, though all of you who are savvy to the forums will probably easily find the other Flickr that has the pictures of us doing the dumb things we did last week.
Yep.
The things we will talk about Thursday.
All right. My thing of the day is, I'm sure everyone has seen this by now because it's at the top of YouTube. It's an old man on YouTube, like a 79-year-old man. And he's from Britain, which is awesome because that means he talks in a cool way.
Is he actually 79, or did you just
He
make up a
really
number?
is like 79 years old.
You keep saying like. Is he or is he not 79?
He's 79 years old.
Okay.
And
because you said like 79, as in he's like 80 or he's like 90, but the fact that you used 79 specifically.
he's 79 years old.
Okay.
I think what the deal was, his YouTube profile says 78, but in one of the videos he says 79. So he must have joined YouTube before his birthday.
Damn you, internet.
Yeah. Anyway, this old guy, apparently he used to be a biker, but he doesn't have tattoos or anything. And he used to be pretty hardcore. And now he's an old man in Britain. And he likes blues music, which is awesome because I like blues music. And he likes YouTube. And he's one of the few old people who actually knows enough to go on YouTube and look at stuff. And he thinks it's really cool that all the cool videos that young people are making. So he decided that he would try to make a YouTube video. And he pretty much set up a webcam and he played some blues music and he talked about being an old cranky guy, and he figures he'll impart some of his old man wisdom onto the YouTube kids out there.
I have so much respect for this man.
And he succeeds in becoming the most popular thing on YouTube.
I mean, 79. Think about how old that is. Think about how different the world was when he was a punk kid.
And now he's managed to get on YouTube and become stupid popular.
I mean, I know a lot of people my age who couldn't get on YouTube.
Yep. So I've linked you to his first video, which is called First Try. And there's a lot of comments and there are even videos people have put up in response to this video. But he also, if you go to the guy's YouTube page, which I can't seem to find because I don't know how to use YouTube, there is, you can see all the videos he's made. He's got like episodes going on. It's sort of like it's more like a vlog, you know?
A vlog. I like that.
It's a vlog.
That's a terrible word that should never be used.
I know, but that's the most accurate word for what this old man is making.
You know what? You're allowed to say vlog because I've said blogosphere more than once.
All right.
And I said potosphere once, too.
Yeah. I normally wouldn't say vlog for something like Ask a Ninja or whatever, but this is a vlog. An awesome old man vlog that is deservedly at the top of YouTube.
All right, now, before we go into the podcasting panel at Otakon, first off, a bunch of meta bits. Stay tuned, once again, all this week for all of our Otakon and Wildwood and Atlantic City coverage. We have so many funny stories to tell, you have no idea.
Not a single idea. Unless you were with us. Then you already know all these stories.
We did some dangerous things. We gambled and won a decent sum of money.
Don't give it away.
Nah, that wasn't giving anything away.
I was giving something away.
That was giving a tiny bit away. Someone ate something.
That's
Someone
the kind of stuff you got to give away.
Someone had something made.
People bought things.
Yes, people bought things indeed.
People did not buy things.
Some things that were bought involve eyeballs and robots.
People engaged in activities and said things which were humorous.
There is a thing that exists. It is called a clown pistol, and it is weighed heavily on my mind.
All right.
Okay. Now, the panel. We were asked to do we asked to do, and then Otakon said, this is a great idea, please do it. A panel on podcasting, as in how to listen to podcasts, what they are, how to do them, and all that sort of thing at Otakon this year.
It was scheduled for Sunday morning, which means everyone is checking out at their hotels and isn't going to come to your panel. But regardless of that, like, a good number of people showed up.
Yeah, it was also, interestingly enough, scheduled. I mean, there are 4 panel rooms at Otakon this year, 2 of which are the standard panel rooms, one of which is like the tiny panel room they give to unpopular things. And they put us in the panel room that was pretty much massive. I would use the word ginormous.
Yes, this year they've destroyed main events. What used to be main events, which was this tremendous ballroom on the top floor of the convention center, they removed that entirely because the only reason they had main events was for the cosplay, and they didn't really, anything else they used it for did not use even half the space of main events.
Now, this may not happen next year.
Yeah, we don't know next year.
We'll have much to say about
when
that
we interview
on Wednesday.
Jim Vowles.
Yes. And on Wednesday when we give our general con report.
So because they moved main events to the arena down the street, they split up. They moved the cosplay to the arena down the street. Main events was split up, and they cut it in half. And one half of it is now Theater 1, which is a showing theater for movies and stuff. The other half was split in half yet again. One of those quarters, I think, was a video room. It was like Video 7 or something, or Video 6. I don't remember. But the other quarter, so a former quarter of main events became Panel 4, which was us.
There was a massive sound system in there to the point. Now, some of it's cut out, but you can still hear the echo. We were on stage with the microphones, and it was so loud and echoey that it sounded fine in the place for the audience. But because we were on stage, we could not actually hear what anyone in the audience was saying to us.
Yep. So eventually, at some point in the podcast, we get off the stage, and then we can hear people.
Yes. Now, there was a feedback at one point. I forget who walked in front of the speaker, but they walked in front of the speaker.
Whoever they are a fanboy or girl.
If I listened to it, I could probably figure out who it was. I don't remember. Now, the other part of this is that the audio equipment was very expensive and fancy. It was also old and broken. So as a result, the raw recording of the panel, which sounded really good otherwise because they used really good microphones and everything was top-notch, has this...
Yeah, basically what happened is there was already existing awesome audio equipment in the panel, more than we will ever need for Geeknights. And we asked the guy, the audio engineer in charge of the room, if we could have a cable that would, we could plug into our Mac and our mixer and record from it. And he did. He gave us a cable. But the cable went bzzz.
And there was really nothing he could do about it. And it was pretty low and it was pretty consistent. So whatever, we decided to record anyway. Now, the choices in terms of playing this panel back for you were either one, leave that noise in, which was not what you want.
No, I tried to listen to it with that noise, and it is painful. Wicked painful.
Now, the other option was to do a simple noise gate, wherein I cut out the whenever no one's talking. But that means that you hear it whenever we talk, and it made me sound weird.
Not good.
The third option, which we went with, was to basically use the Audacity noise reduction thing, because while I could have done it manually, Scott did not want to sit there for an hour or more while I did it.
Yep.
Plus, I've never done that on such a terrible source of noise before. And I removed all of the frequencies that the was on. As a result, we sound slightly like robots.
And we're slightly echoey.
Well, the echoes are there anyway.
I know, but
very
it's
echoey.
doubly echoey.
Yes. And so it sounds a lot better than some podcasts I've listened to.
It
so
does.
You can't complain to me about this.
Yes, your only other option besides a slightly robotic sounding podcasting panel was to have no podcasting panel. And we would now be talking about something else unprepared.
Now, as a result, we are going to have next week on Monday a discussion on the difficulties of doing live shows as opposed to recorded shows in our studio.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference between performing live and not performing live. And there's also a big difference between performing live with your own equipment and performing live with other people's equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's a big difference between being well rested and being hungover with a sore throat, a broken voice, and a bloodshot eye.
2 bloodshot eyes here.
Yeah.
But no hangover.
So I'll warn you now, we sound weird because our voices are completely gone and we've taken drugs in order to be able to speak. We are so tired and broken because we had to get up at 6 in the morning to prepare for this and to get out of our hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
We had slept exactly 3.5 hours in the 48 hours prior to this panel.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, despite all that, I think it was a pretty good panel. It was definitely not our best work. I was much happier with the podcasting panel we did at Otakon last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely, it was more fun at least.
Yeah.
I mean, this was fun, but I think if they had given us a better time, like maybe like Friday, later Friday or earlier Saturday.
Also, if I hadn't been hungover, that would have really helped.
Yeah, then we could have had more people in there, and then it would have been more exciting.
Now, also, the one thing that would be nice is I think instead of doing an informative panel, even though everyone seemed to really like, I mean, we got a lot of really good questions, and a lot of people tried to bother us after the show to ask us more questions, which, because at that point we couldn't talk anymore, we were unable to answer all of your questions.
If you have questions, send us email.
Send us an audio.
Audio also. Yeah, audio's awesome.
But I think next year we're going to try to do a less informative, more fun panel, as in Rim and Scott talk about something unrelated to podcasting loudly for an hour on Friday night.
Aha.
Something possibly making fun of hentai.
I don't want to do one of those.
Not as in we watch hentai and make fun of it, but we get people to come and we make fun of them for liking hentai.
I could think of something better than that. Given a year, I'm guaranteed to come up with something non-hentai related.
It's got to be something that'll fit into the over 18 late night crowd at Otakon, as opposed to the hungover Sunday morning crowd.
All right.
And also, the final bit before we play this, the other things that we recorded at Otakon are a whole bunch of interviews that we're going to play all throughout the week whenever they're relevant. We did a webcomics roundtable with a whole bunch of webcomic artists, and it turned out really well. All I have to do is do stuff to it, and then we'll play it probably next week. And we recorded a short roundtable with the folks at Anime World Order and the folks at Ninja Consultant, and who else was there?
Fast Karate for the Gentleman.
Yes. We will be playing that probably next Wednesday.
Yes, if you visit all of those podcasts, the Anime World Order, the Ninja Consultant, and the Fast Karate for the Gentleman, those are like the primary podcasters we were down with at the con. So their latest episodes have stuff possibly relating to us that you might be interested in.
Yes, and during the next week, we will have stuff related to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So thus, without further ado, and once again, I apologize, this is as good as I could make this sound, the Monday after the week of awesome, the podcasting and internet radio panel from Otakon 2006.
Woot.
Well, we've got a stellar crowd here, so I suppose we will just begin. My name is Rim.
I'm Scott.
And we are the hosts of Geeknights, the late-night podcast for geeks. Now, this is a panel not about Geeknights, our podcast, but about podcasting in general. How to listen, if anyone's interested, how to make a podcast, what this whole thing's about, and then we'll probably just descend into general chaos as the panel goes on.
So thank you all for coming. I know it's not easy to wake up. It's Sunday at 10 in the morning after a raucous Saturday night, so thank you.
All right, so how many of you listen to podcasts? All right. How many of you have never heard of a podcast? You just wandered into this room.
Woo! All right.
Do any of you actually do a podcast? Really? All right. We will do some shout-outs at the end to get you to pimp your podcast, since we got to represent here at Otakon. But for all of you who have no idea about podcasting or how to listen, we'd like to go through kind of what podcasting really is and the fact that you don't need an iPod to be a part of podcasting.
Technically, a podcast is an RSS feed with enclosures pointing to multimedia coded files, but
what that
means in English,
if you have an MP3 player and any kind of pod-catching software, there are millions of applications out there that all do it. iTunes, is the one most people know.
There's
then
also Juice Receiver.
You subscribe to a radio show online. So you go to their website, you subscribe, and then every time they make a new episode, it's automatically downloaded. The next time you plug in your MP3 player, it's automatically put on the MP3 player, and then you listen to it. It's like a radio show plus a TiVo on the internet.
Yeah, but you don't even need an MP3 player. I mean, most people just listen on their computers with whatever Windows Media Player or iTunes or whatever music player they have, you know. And you don't even need, all you need is a computer and an internet connection. People listen to us with dial-up. I don't know what's up with that.
People listen to us with dial-up in foreign countries. I don't know how they manage that.
Yeah. And a podcast isn't necessarily just audio, even though it's usually audio. There are plenty of video podcasts out there. And, yeah. We don't make those because they're very difficult and time-consuming and bandwidth-intensive. Yeah, though one of the most, Ask a Ninja is a very popular video podcast. One person recognized Ask a Ninja. Woo! All right.
I know it's Sunday morning. Wake up! Give me a Leroy! Jenkins! All right.
All right.
I've never had such a stellar crowd before.
I will take some questions in a minute, but is everyone kind of clear on what podcasts are, how to listen to them? It's just internet radio.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, that's exactly what it uses. In fact, it's not a podcast if it doesn't use real simple syndication. I'll repeat the question. He wanted to know if the subscribing to podcasts is using RSS, really simple syndication, which, yes, that's the only way. And basically, someone makes, an RSS feed, and in each item in the feed, they put what's called an enclosure, which is just a URL to an MP3 or a video file. And then if you use a piece of software like iTunes or Juice Receiver or iPodder or any of those things, it recognizes the enclosure, and when there's a new item in the feed and the enclosure is there, it automatically will get the episode for you, and you can listen to it whenever you want.
And also what a lot of people do is if they don't want to install anything on their computer or they don't have an MP3 player, you can go to like Audio or Yahoo Podcasts, and they have players or things built into the web browser where you just go to a website and you can just stream the audio directly from there.
I mean, half our listeners don't even use the RSS feed or, any of the podcasting features at all. They just visit our website 4 days a week, click on a link and download an MP3 and then play it in their player without using anything fancy.
Yep, though more than half of our listeners use Firefox.
Yeah, if you use Firefox, it's pretty easy. You can subscribe to podcasts with the live bookmarks. It works pretty well.
Yep. Now, podcasting really, webcomics. You know how webcomics started out kind of this obscure thing, and then they kind of ballooned, and then one day they exploded, and suddenly Mega Tokyo and Penny Arcade and all those things are just huge. Podcasting hasn't quite reached that point yet. There are probably more people reading a popular webcomic than listen to all the podcasts combined at this point.
There's some crazy popular podcasts, but they're usually associated with big media. You don't see big media going into the webcomics industry so much. But there are podcasts of like Major League Baseball, official podcasts, ABC, NBC, CBS, NPR all have official podcasts, and those have a whole mess of listeners, but those people, they're only listening usually to that specific thing. They're not into the podcasting scene, really.
But among the non-huge podcasts, the best thing, you're all here at an anime con, so you're obviously some stretch of either nerd or geek, which is awesome. Those are not bad words anymore. There are more geekly podcasts, I think, than there are anything else out there. How many video game podcasts are there?
Too many, and none of them are good. Generally what happened is because early in the podcasting days, the only people who knew how to use RSS and all this stuff were geeks. So the podcasts that became the most popular and got the most attention early on were the podcasts targeted towards the geek demographic. Podcasts like Twit had got, like a hajillion listeners. And, all the podcasts that are sort of, there are crazy podcasts out there. There's one that's like about Australian real estate market and stuff. It gets kind of crazy. But
you think you just made up that weird example. That's a big podcast.
It is a pretty happening. There's a podcast about like financial aid for colleges. That's all they talk about like every week. It's crazy.
And of course, I know the question burning on everyone's mind, are there anime podcasts? And the answer is there's an infinite number of them.
Yeah.
Actually, they're here, and they're supposed to be at this panel with us. We don't know where they went, but Anime World Order, you might have seen their flyers. They're here. Are they here? I didn't see them. I still don't see them.
Oh, okay.
They're somewhere in the con. They were in our room last night, and despite their assassination attempt, we are still here today.
That's right. A clown. We are immune to clown pistol.
I was shot in the face with a clown pistol after Daryl Surratt screamed "Sic Semper Tyrannis" last night.
Yeah.
I got a little bruise still.
Yeah, but anime podcasts pretty much fall into two categories. There's the ones that's one fanboy going, yeah, my favorite anime is this and how it was so great, and you don't listen to those.
Worst anime ever.
And then there's like the 3 or 4 ones that are actually intelligent. Like ours.
Ours really goes beyond an anime podcast. We're kind of... Well, we'll get into that. Do you guys actually, are you interested in how we do this? How people make podcasts? How this all works? All right. I don't know if they picked it up, but everyone yelled yeah, so we'll get right into that.
All right.
We do a show called Geeknights. Now, we do it 4 nights a week for about an hour every night.
Which is crazy by most people's standards. They're like, how do you do it? And we're like, we sit down and talk for an hour every night.
See, the thing is, we're really not trying to diss anyone or anything, but in terms of podcasting, it seems like a lot of the podcasts that started early on are people who really knew a lot about what they wanted to talk about. not so much about the audio or the tech or all that stuff. So a lot of podcasts have a lot of good content, but they're hard to listen to either because of audio problems or their website is difficult to use, or the RSS feeds are broken. A lot of good podcasts don't show up in iTunes just because people don't know how to do all the stuff to make it show up in iTunes.
Yeah, there's some podcasts that I honestly want to listen to, but they don't even have a feed with enclosures. It's just I would have to go to their website every once in a while to maybe find a new episode if I'm lucky, and it's just not worth the effort, no matter how good their show is. The effort of constantly checking a website all the time for a new episode.
Yeah, I mean, some people who listen to one or two podcasts, yeah, they'll just go to the website every day and download the episode. But if the episode gets uploaded an hour later, then they'll miss it till the next day. Or if you listen to 20 podcasts and they update every day, why not just have it all automatic? So if one podcast isn't automatic, they really lose out on listenership just because most people who listen to podcasts, they don't even know that you can listen to them outside of iTunes. So it doesn't show up in iTunes. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't even exist.
Yeah. It's pretty sad that, it was a big mistake when they came up with the word podcast. It's like at first they thought, oh, right, that's the perfect word. And then they were like, oh, wait, now we have to tell everyone 1,000 times that you don't need an iPod and you don't need iTunes. And
yeah, how many times when we tell someone, one of our old friends, hey, we do a radio show now, a podcast. Oh, I don't have an iPod.
You
don't need an iPod.
Need one. If you can play an MP3 and download an MP3, you can listen to podcasts. That's it.
Yep. Now, in terms of actually recording or doing this, there's a lot of bad information out there on the internet. If you just think like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast and Google around or look at what other people have said they've done, I hate to say it, but most of the guides out there really give terrible advice as to how to make your audio sound good or how to use the applications properly. Or actually, this is kind of an aside, but the worst thing is that Apple seems to really push a lot of their solutions, like buy a Mac, it's really easy to podcast. And we found by doing it 4 nights a week that Macs are really not a good solution for podcasting at all. And GarageBand, which is really promoted as this podcasting tool, if you go beyond the most amateur level in the world, like if you try to go anywhere beyond that, it's pretty much unusable. It doesn't have the functionality. It doesn't have the features. It has arbitrary limits in it. Like you can't even record an episode as long as you want because it'll arbitrarily say, oh, that was too long. I'm stopping you.
Yeah, the worst thing about if you use GarageBand to make a podcast and you don't know what you're doing, if you just follow the instructions that Apple gives you, you will accidentally make a podcast that really does need an iPod or iTunes to listen to, and that's really, really bad. You're basically saying, oh, those millions of people with Windows and whatever, they can't listen to my show. Screw them. Only Apple people can listen to my show, which is not very good.
Yeah, one of our listeners once asked us, why don't you do the Apple Enhanced podcast? I think it would be really cool. We had to explain to him that that would alienate at least half of our listeners who don't have Apple, don't have iPods, and they still want to listen.
Yeah, also, we could do, some people put an enhanced podcast and a normal MP3 podcast up together, but that doubles the amount of bandwidth and storage we need, and it really, really sucks.
Now, what we use to actually record the show, we'll take a whole bunch of questions in a little bit. We've got a lovely assistant here, Nuri, who will be going around with a microphone at some point, because we are recording this, and it's all going to go up on our show after we get back from the Jersey Shore. Yeah. At some point. But we've got a Linux box, actually, running Gentoo, and on that, we run a program called Resound, which is, if anyone has ever heard of it, it's like an old program called Cool Edit Pro or Cool Edit 2000, which...
Yeah, if you can get Cool Edit Pro or Cool Edit 2000, those are the ultimate wave editing programs ever created, and you can make awesome podcasts with that, but they don't make it anymore. What happened was Adobe bought it, and then they removed a bunch of good stuff from it and added a bunch of other crap that you don't care about to it, and they called it Audition, and they doubled the price. So,
I mean, Cool Edit really was the industry standard for a lot of radio stations, like professional ones, for the longest time. Yeah, but Resound is an open source program that it mimics almost all of the functionality of Cool Edit, and it's actually gotten to the point now where there are many cases where it goes beyond what Cool Edit could even do in the first place.
Yeah, but if you're loaded, you can buy Audition. If you're poor, you can install Linux and get Resound for free.
Now, what most people use who do podcasts, actually, is a program called Audacity, which is also open source, but you can run it on Windows, Linux, you can even run it on Macs if you want. And it's really easy to use. It's got basic functionality is there to where you could put a pretty good podcast with it, even not knowing a lot about audio.
Yeah, but if you get more advanced, Audacity will eventually not have the features you're looking for. And, some of the filters in it, you might want to do something different, and it just doesn't have, the controls that you want. And, so if you keep it simple, and Audacity is probably all you're ever going to need. But if you want to do fancy stuff, you're going to need something else like RIAA.
I mean, really, in terms of what you use to do a podcast, you have to decide, are you doing this just for fun? Do you really want to learn about how to do this the professional way? How deeply do you want to get into this? Because the scale of money you can spend is from $5 to tens of thousands of dollars on fancy equipment, like a certain podcast we know that still doesn't sound so good.
Yeah, I mean, look at all this equipment those guys have over there. If we had that stuff, we could make some crazy freaking podcast,
Yeah, the AV guy who sets up this room was actually laughing at our tiny little mixer we have here.
Yeah, instead we have like $100 worth of junk on the floor, which is more than most people have,
Yeah, we'll go through all the hardware in a minute, and we try to show it to you, but it's all plugged in. But after the panel, we can totally just show you like everything we've got and how it's plugged in. But in terms of actually doing the podcast and how deeply you want to get into it, you have to learn a lot about audio. And if you use like RIAA or Audacity and you get audio textbooks and you actually try to learn how to do it better, as opposed to using an Apple, which will make it sound pretty good to start, but you really can't go anywhere from there. You'll learn a lot about audio. You'll learn a lot of valuable skills that maybe you could use in a job someday. I mean, you can put audio engineer on your resume. There, you've already gained something from podcasting, even if your podcast pod fades, as they like to call it.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you, there's also this web hosting side of it, there's a lot of, you need to manage blog software, you need to manage the RSS feed, you need to manage all those podcast directories. So in addition to getting audio engineering skills, you're getting a lot of webmastering skills. And if you don't have the webmastering skills, your podcast isn't going to work.
Yep, like most podcasters, they either use something like Libsyn, which has a good service for doing podcasts, or they'll use WordPress.com and then FeedBurner to run the feed. We'll talk about all that stuff in detail. But we actually, because we're technologists, I mean, we're both computer professionals. We have our own hosting, as in we have our own Linux box in the sky that we run our own everything on, our own web server, our own forums, our own Jabber server.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to actually manage everything on the low level. That way, if something goes wrong, I know it's my fault, and I know I can fix it, instead of having to wait for some guy who might be on vacation to come and do something to some computer somewhere.
But at the same time, it takes a lot more work. I mean, if you're just using like Libsyn, and Libsyn goes down, all you do is email Libsyn and say, hey, my podcast disappeared, WTF, and maybe it'll come back up at some point. If it goes down, we have to sit there and try to fix it. But at the same time, by dealing with all that, you'll learn a lot, and your podcast will just get better and better and better. It'll sound better, it'll look more professional, and you'll learn a lot. What can I say?
Yeah, so if you actually want to make a podcast, you get the software we just described to you, you plug a microphone into the computer, and you push record. It's really that easy.
Microphones are a big source of confusion for a lot of people, because most people, you buy a computer, it either has a microphone built into it, or it comes with like that tiny little white stick microphone that comes with most sound cards. You really can't use that. I mean, it's cheap, but your podcast will sound terrible. Like if anyone listened to the first Penny Arcade podcast, they basically used something like that sitting on one side of the room, and it was almost unlistenable. But that doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. We have $20 Radio Shack microphones, and our podcast sounds pretty good, I think I could say.
Yeah, I think we need to buy some of these things, though. They're a lot
we got to
better.
upgrade at this point.
Yeah.
Since we have this giant crowd here, obviously.
Yeah. Is don't spend more money than your skill allows. I mean, a lot of people will, they get into something and then they buy fancy equipment. Like guys will get into golf and then they'll buy a fancy set of golf clubs thinking it'll make them better at golf. The same thing is true with podcasting. A lot of people get into podcasting. They spend thousands of dollars. Like, I get a fancy microphone and a big mixer, and they don't know really how to use it that well, so it doesn't help their audio quality that much. We've done the opposite, where we spend the minimum possible, and we use our knowledge to bring the quality up above a lot of the people who spend more money than we do.
Because really, I mean, podcasting is fun and great, and you can just do it in your spare time, but it will take a lot of time and a lot of effort, at least initially, as you learn how to edit audio and you learn what sounds good and what doesn't. I mean, when we started doing the show, it would take me about 3 hours after every episode to do all the stuff to it to make it sound good to you guys. Post-production, editing out, Scott coughing or Scott burping or Scott dropping the microphone.
Rim hacking up a loogie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or when we forget something or we forget what we're talking about or we forget the mics aren't actually on and we talk for an hour.
Or you accidentally delete the whole episode.
That only happened 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Okay.
And as it goes on, it's gotten to the point now where it takes us literally maybe 2 minutes worth of editing to make the show ready to go.
Yeah, what really takes the longest now is the actual computer processing. I mean, Rim's computer is a Athlon 1 gigahertz. It takes, he clicks make MP3 and we wait 10 minutes. It's really kind of painful.
Hey, I built that computer for $4,000 in like 1999.
It's time to buy a new box.
Now, we could ramble on a lot about all the specific details of what we use for hosting, what we use equipment-wise, but I guess at this point we could send our lovely assistant in. If you guys have specific questions, since it's kind of a small crowd, I guess we can really address all of you almost individually if you really want.
Yeah, we'll get all nice and cozy.
Yes, that was indeed your cue, oh lovely assistant. This is Nuri, by the way, who does a podcast called Artist Alley.
Don't turn it on in front of the speakers or we'll all die.
Yes, walk across, then turn it on. See, it's amazing. Just doing this for so long, you learn so much about how to deal with all this audio stuff, or like how to hold a microphone properly, which Scott's still kind of struggling with from time to time.
What can I say? All right.
Hello. You were talking earlier about enhanced podcast, Apple enhanced podcast. What's the difference between an enhanced podcast and
Okay. Our podcast is an MP3 file. You can play it on anything that plays an MP3. An enhanced podcast is it's a special Apple thing that's Apple only. So you need iTunes or an iPod. And what they do is, first, it's an AAC file and not an MP3. So you need some software that can play an AAC in order to hear the audio.
Now, a lot of modern, even not iPods, but MP3 players will play AAC, but not everything. And there are people who actually couldn't listen to an AAC
Now, in addition, what it does for you is if you have, there's normal AACs, which are just audio, and that's not a big deal. But an enhanced AAC does 3 things for you. Number 1, you can put like these markers within your podcast. So, for example, our podcast starts out with the news, then the thing of the day, then the main bit. We can put little markers at the beginning of each segment that allow people using the enhanced podcast to skip around to different segments.
So it's like chapter markers on the
Exactly. Yeah. It also allows you to put different images, album covers for different parts of the podcast. So if you're talking about a race car in the first part of the episode, you can have a picture of a race car as the album art. And then later on, you're talking about the RIAA owl, and you have a picture of an owl as the album art. And the third thing it does is it allows you to put a link to a website in the album art. So if someone's listening with iTunes and you start talking about Otakon, then there'll be a picture of the Otakon logo down there with a link to Otakon.com right there. So if someone's listening and they go, oh, that's pretty interesting, they look over in the corner, they see a link, they click on it, it opens up in their browser. It's actually pretty cool, but you're alienating so many listeners by doing it that it's kind of not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying don't do it at all. We're just saying we don't do it because we really kind of have a broad appeal. But in terms of, there are a lot of podcasts that make very good use of that, like podcasts that try to teach you Japanese, which there are a lot of. They'll show the kana or they'll show kanji while they talk about him, and it's a great method of learning all the kanji. You see the kanji there on your iPod, and it's telling you about the kanji, and then the next one, and back and forth. Or technology podcasts, they'll show the schematic diagram of whatever thing they're talking about while they're talking about it, which...
Yeah, I found it's really good for music podcasts because, as you listen to different songs throughout the podcast, you'll see the cover of the album that they're playing, and you'll have a link to the band's website and all that kind of cool stuff. But, yeah, if you have a lot of money and a lot of bandwidth, you can do a normal MP3 and an enhanced podcast for the people who want the enhanced podcast. But if you can't afford, double the bandwidth and double the storage for all your podcasting needs, then you probably should just make an MP3.
Yeah, I mean, we already spend over $1,000 a year just on bandwidth and hosting at this point. Yeah, if we had 2 feeds, we'd have double that.
Yeah. All right. Question?
Killing time in the pen.
Actually, it's more of a direct question. I've just started listening to your podcast, so I haven't caught up yet. By now, has somebody told you what the Duchy of Grand Fenwick is?
The Duchy of Grand Fenwick. We had a couple of people answer the question, which made me very happy.
Ah, good.
Yeah, our podcast has actually gotten a somewhat interesting community around it, to the point that our forums are basically a whole text-based show unto themselves.
Yeah, all right.
All right, I have a convention, a meeting, and we want to podcast those to people who were not able to attend that. And we have some background hiss from our audio equipment, because again, we couldn't afford to bring big stuff. Is there software to take out that hiss before we actually broadcast it? And how difficult is that to do?
I could go into excruciating detail into how to take the hiss out, how to get rid of noise, all that stuff. And I'll try to keep it as informative and yet light as I can. But basically, there are a couple of ways to deal with noise. I mean, most of you have ever tried to record something on your computer. There's that hissing noise in the background, or a low hum sometimes, or your voice is just really scratchy.
Oh, that sounds like this.
Or you breathe into the microphone, because you hold it next to your face all the time. Like that. Yeah.
Or the speaker, some of them are nailing the mic, and some of them are like talking out here, so you can't hear
exactly.
Microphone discipline is a very important part of podcasting. Because how annoying is this right now? Would you listen to a podcast that did this for an hour?
How about a podcast that does like...
There are so many that do. And I hate it because I like the podcast, but I just can't listen to them because they keep going like this, and I have no idea what they're actually talking about. But in terms of like hisses and noise, the hardware solution is something called a noise gate, which in its simplest form is a tiny little thing that says whenever the audio level is below a certain threshold, it gets rid of all the audio there at all. So if there's a low hiss, whenever you're not talking, that low hiss disappears, and then when you amplify the whole podcast, it doesn't amplify that hissing and make it a louder hiss. More advanced ways to get rid of noise, if you use Audacity, it has a nice function where you highlight an empty part of your podcast. Like while you're recording, you record 10 seconds of silence. You highlight it, and then you take they call it a noise signature, and it'll try to figure out what frequencies all the noise are in, and then you can remove that from the rest of the show, which works with varying degrees of success. You really have to experiment with it. Generally, the more noise you remove, the more you sound like a robot on the show.
I can't tell you how many robot podcasts I've listened to.
The hardware, in general, in terms of this sort of thing, a hardware solution is always better than a software solution in terms of quality and ease of use. But a software solution is usually free. That is key. I mean, a noise gate, $20, $30, but it all adds up as you buy noise gates, compressors. For every audio problem you have, there's a piece of hardware that'll make it go away, but that's one more chunk of money you have to spend.
And even when there is a piece of hardware that can make your problem go away, you're going to have to spend some time learning to use that piece of hardware. I mean, a noise gate's pretty simple. I could set one of those up, but a compressor is a lot more difficult. If you don't know about audio engineering, you're going to have to read some books.
Yeah.
Actually, when we did record this, we had it compressed, and that was part of the problem because it was a little bit of a noisy mixer, so it did bring the floor up, and that brought the noise up.
Actually, if you have a big problem with noise, there's a hardware thing, or actually you can do this in software in a lot of programs, called an expander, which is the opposite of a compressor. Now, actually, I'll talk about this now. It's a nice segue because this is really an important part of podcasting that very few podcasts seem to know how to do properly. There are two ways to deal with noise and two ways to deal with audio levels, but generally, you want everything in a podcast to be about the same volume. It's not music where there's a quiet part and a loud part. You don't want one guy in a podcast to be really loud and one guy to be really quiet because that's annoying. And a compressor, what it does is once the audio gets above a certain loudness, it'll start decreasing the amplitude or reducing the gain on that audio further. So the louder I talk, the more it turns the volume down on me. So in the end, no matter how much I yell, the podcast, it still sounds pretty much the same. It doesn't get that much louder. And the problem with this is that you're making the whole thing quieter as a result because all it can do is take away audio. Now, you have noise, like the hissing, the hum, and all that, and that's really low. That's like this low-level, like if you look at a picture of a wave, the actual audio, there's this low-level warbling going on when no one's talking. And if you compress the highest vocal points, the highest amplitude of the wave, the points where you're talking the loudest, are far away from that noise. That way the noise is overpowered by your voice. When you compress, you make that how loud. I'm trying to do this in such non-technical terms. If you compress it, you're bringing those peaks down, you're bringing your audio level down, which means my voice is now closer to that noise. So you've brought the noise floor up. The floor below which the noise is higher, and as a result, there's more noise in your podcast.
It makes a lot more sense when you look at the waves from when you talk, and then you can see, and someone shows you a picture of this is what a good wave should look like, and this is what you have recorded. You're like, oh my God, it's so bad. Oh.
Yeah, just basically, if Scott yells, it turns the volume down on him automatically. Now, an expander is what you need. It does the exact opposite. The louder something is, the louder it makes it. So it expands the audio and it amplifies everything except the noise. It amplifies everything that's above a certain threshold. So the noise or the hiss, which is below that, won't get picked up. And that would probably deal with the problem you have, at least to some degree.
All right, more questions.
I swear to God, if we get feedback in this room, I'll scream.
Hi. Yeah, my question is that say like that a couple of my friends of mine want to do a podcast, but we want to, for example, interview somebody, but they're not in the same room as us. Say like they're like, just like in another state or something. What's for PC users? What's the best software you recommend for that to do a conference and record a podcast while you're interviewing someone?
Well, there's a funny story here.
Okay, there are many, many ways, and as always, a lot of money will make it really easy.
Well, should we tell the funny story first about how we failed at this?
All right, tell the story.
It's Otakon related. So, about 2 months ago, we did a bunch of stuff about Otakon, the whole Artist Alley fiasco that happened when there was the misunderstanding, and as a result, we ended up talking to Jim Vowles a bunch, the con chair of Otakon this year, and he expressed interest in having us interview him on the show, and we thought, this is going to be fantastic, the con chair of Otakon, and we get to talk to him. We're going to ask him so much stuff off the record, oh my God. So we get him on, and he doesn't want to use Skype because for various reasons. Skype is good, but it's also bad. And he had a Mac, and we had a Mac eventually. So we decided to try to use iChat, which supposedly integrates with GarageBand.
Yes. Theoretically, if you have iChat and GarageBand, and so does the other person, you can iChat with each other, and GarageBand will record your conversation. That will fail if they have a really, really old version of iChat like Jim Vowles does. Now, some other solutions are you can get, I forget what the name of it is, but there's this telephone bridge where you can actually use an actual telephone and plug the telephone cable into something that then goes into your computer, and you can record it as if it was a microphone, but it's a telephone. And then you just call them on the phone and start talking.
Now, the audio that way is usually pretty bad. I mean,
you have to know a lot about audio to make that work properly.
And even then, just telephones in general have very low audio quality. I mean, we did some interviews over cell phones, and it was listenable, but it sounded pretty bad overall. I'd say the best solution, if you don't have a lot of equipment and you don't have a lot of PCs, is something called Gizmo Phone, which is a lot like Skype, voice over IP, but it has recording built into it. So you can just record the whole conversation without having to do anything special. Skype has no built-in way to record what you're talking about, and there are no really easy ways to get around that.
Your choices for recording Skype are pretty much, there's like a couple programs called like Hot Recorder or Turbo Recorder or something like that, and they have ads, and you have to pay their shareware, and they will record Skype. You just open Skype, start talking, push the button in the recorder, and it will record.
What some people do is they'll do the Skype where one person records what comes out of their speakers, the other person records what comes out of their speakers, and then they mix it together. And that is the most tedious and terrible way you could possibly do it, but a lot of podcasts do it that way.
Now, the correct way to record Skype is actually somewhat difficult to set up audio-wise. I mean, if you don't have, you need a mixer, you need a bunch of cables, you need 2 computers on your end. And what you do is you have a computer that records the audio, you have a computer that only does Skype, and you treat the output of the computer that does Skype as a person with a microphone, and you plug them into your mixer. The thing is, you then have to send back what you say to the Skype computer so the person can hear you talking. without sending them back what they say, because then, if they talk, it comes into your computer, then goes back out to them. They hear everything they say, and it really screws it up. So you need a mixer, and you need to fiddle with the auxiliary settings, and it's kind of tricky.
There's no way I can explain easily without showing you how to do it. But after the panel, anyone who wants to see, come on up, and I'll show you exactly how we do that and where the cables go and how it all works.
There is an episode, there is a TV show, I think on revision3.com or whatever the URL is, called System, SYSTM, and there was an episode where they went to this guy Leo Laporte, who's a big-time podcasting guy. They went to his house, and he showed everyone like the ISDN box he had and this giant mixer and how he set up Skype, and that's how we figured out how to do it. We saw exactly what he did.
My question is, when it comes to group environments where you have multiple people talking in a room at the same time, you have a group discussion, and you can't get individuals up to the microphone one at a time, do you have an arrangement for that, a solution for that?
Well,
there are two ways.
Well, actually, we had a lot of experience with that last night. And generally, we do the show together. We also lived together in college for a long time. A lot of our listeners seem to think that we are gay, which was kind of hilarious.
We're not gay.
We're just, what was the term from Clerks?
I don't know.
But we've been friends for so long, and actually all these people that we know too, when we record a show, we have these cues, and even if we're all in the room together talking, it's really no big deal in terms of cutting people off. There's just kind of this vibe and flow. And especially us, when we get a third person on our show as a guest, they can't get a word in edgewise. We have to force ourselves to shut up and let them talk.
Yeah, some people invited us onto their podcasts, and inviting one of us is okay, but if they invite both of us, it basically becomes an episode of our show.
Yeah, what we were on,
with them as the guest.
We appeared on Geek Speak, and it was just us talking to each other for an hour, and him kind of yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you want to record a group, there's two ways you can do it. Number one, you get a mixer and a whole bunch of microphones, one for everybody.
Again, money can solve every problem.
Number two, you can get, I haven't actually found one yet for sale, but you can get there are these omnidirectional mics that you can put in the middle of a table that, they use them for teleconferencing in offices and things. And if you get one of those, it might cost, I don't know how much they cost. They're probably a lot of money.
$60, $70.
Yes, but if you get one of those, you put it in the middle of the table and everyone's voice will come through. The quality won't be amazing, but it'll be decent enough to share with everyone.
It'll be pretty bad, all things considered.
It'll sound like an office teleconference.
Generally, what we did, I think the best way, what we did last night, we had a whole bunch of people trying to be on our show, and we only had three. See, there are two kinds of microphones, basically. There are omnidirectional and unidirectional. Now, an omnidirectional mic records the same volume from any direction, so you stick it in the middle of four people, and they can just all kind of talk at it. Or you hand it to someone, and if they don't know how to hold a microphone, it doesn't matter how they're holding it, they'll still sound the same. The problem is it picks up all the noise in the room. So if someone's, fiddling with something in the corner, it'll pick that up too. And unidirectional mics really only pick up sound from essentially one direction. So you have to point it very specifically at yourself in a certain way, and it won't pick up any noise. Like if I had a unidirectional mic and Scott's talking to me, Scott wouldn't even get picked up on the mic, but I would be picked up perfectly.
Yeah, these are unidirectional, so but if it was omnidirectional, you'd still be able to hear me if I was like this side of it.
So what we did is we had the three unidirectional mics, and we gave those to, I guess, the three people we thought were the coolest, or whoever had the best voices, and then everyone else, we just stuck one omnidirectional mic, and we recorded that on a separate track because it was so noisy. And then what I can do in post-production now is the three people on the good mics, I just throw them in, and then I only bring in the track from the other omnidirectional mic when people on that track are talking, and otherwise I quash it out so none of the noise comes through. In terms of dealing with a bunch of people, in terms of who talks when, you just have to designate someone as the moderator. I basically did the whole first round table we did. Scott wasn't in the room so much. So I moderated the whole thing. I asked people questions. I would cut people off if they were talking too long. Then when we did the thing where, the assassination attempt occurred, we were tired, so Scott and I just kind of did it, and there was really no true moderator, and it kind of descended into chaos until we got shot. But in general, if you ever want to have a whole bunch of people recorded, someone needs to be the moderator. Everyone needs to agree that they will take that person's direction, no matter what they say, until the recording stops.
Yeah, I mean, some podcasts, don't have a moderator, and everyone's polite and they know each other, so they know, only talk at once. If people are interrupting each other or talking over each other, it becomes unlistenable because, one person...
They just keep talking over each other.
Yeah, one person is this loud and another person is exactly as loud. If they both talk at the same time, it gets double loud and not good.
I can't believe that's all the questions.
No, I've got the mic. Understand that hosting and the RSS feed is basically an art form that's constantly developing. Sounds like the two of you are having far more fun than should be allowed. Could you share with us some of your experiences with that?
Okay. What I do is we have hosting from a company called Linode, which is not for the faint of heart. If you cannot administer a Linux system on your own, do not get a Linode. But I have a Linode because I can do that. And what I did is I installed Apache, the web server, PHP, the programming language system, and WordPress. WordPress, if you make a blog post in WordPress and you link to an MP3, it will automatically make the RSS feed and the enclosure and do everything for you. If you don't want to, you can go to WordPress.com and get your own WordPress blog, but your URL is going to be something.wordpress.com. Then what we did is you need special things in your feed for iTunes to recognize it, because iTunes is screwed up and they like to do their own thing. So if you want iTunes and Apple to recognize, all the information about your podcast and you want them to put your podcast in their directory properly, you need to add all this stuff to your feed, which there's two ways you can do it if you're using WordPress. Number one, you can get a WordPress plugin that allows you to do it, or you can use FeedBurner. What FeedBurner does is they provide a service where you give them an RSS feed, then they tidy up your RSS feed into something perfect. And then you share the FeedBurner feed with everyone because that one always works just fine. And that's what we do.
Yeah, they're very good. I mean, I'd say almost probably the majority of podcasts now are moving to FeedBurner just because it's so easy. I mean, like, we're Linux admins and all that, and dealing with email is such a pain that we just use Gmail. And it's kind of the same deal. It's a pain to deal with RSS. So if you just use FeedBurner, they take care of everything for you, and you don't have to worry about all that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there who are scarily manually editing their RSS feeds. If you're manually editing your RSS feed, you are doing something wrong. You should have a piece of software that is doing that for you automatically, or else I don't know why you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I mean, the RSS exists to make podcasting or anything like this easier to do, not harder to do.
Yeah, and as for the hosting, there are a lot more companies now. It used to be just Libsyn, really, but now there's a whole bunch of competitors. I think that Podshow company has something, and there's a few others. And the way they seem to work for podcasts is you can upload so many megabytes of podcasts per month, and then infinity downloads, which is good because if you get 100 million listeners all of a sudden, you don't want to be screwed.
Yep, and they keep your archives as long as you keep paying them, so everything stays up forever. And all told, we spend about $120 a month on all of our hosting.
Yeah, I think our Libsyn is $40, and the Linode hosting is $80.
But in terms of anyone else out there, I mean, one, we do 4 shows a week, and they're all about an hour long. 2, we record pretty high quality, and we use 96 kilobits per second for various reasons. And for anyone else out there who isn't insane like we are, if you do like a weekly or a monthly podcast, you could easily get away with spending $10 or $15 a month and be perfectly fine and ready to go in case you get slashdotted or farked or something.
Yeah, Libsyn actually provides a total podcasting solution. So if you're not doing a whole lot of podcasting, you can just pay them and everything will work. You won't need any other hosts. You won't need anything else. You'll probably need a domain name from someone, but that's about it.
I don't personally terribly recommend using Libsyn for that because their technological service is very good. Their customer support is kind of lacking. And if you don't know about the technology and you need help, Libsyn generally can't provide it very easily or very well.
It's sort of like using GarageBand, it works, it's everything in one, but at the same time, you can't really do anything with it. You're trapped inside the noob's world, the low end.
I generally recommend using WordPress in some form, either on whatever hosting you already have or WordPress.com. Yeah, it's easy to use, you'll learn a lot, and it's really the best solution as far as I can see.
Yeah, there are other blog softwares that are just as good, like Movable Type or TypePad. I don't know what they're called. I don't use them, but they're out there.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up?
My podcast, we use Skype and Audacity simply because one of our hosts is in England, and the other programs don't work so well over there.
we're running into a problem, a rather severe problem, where there are 4 of us total. 2 of us sound great. The other 2 sound awful, and if we put it into a car, they become unhearable.
It's always 2s with us, apparently, but there are 2 things that cause that. Early on, we recorded everything where we encoded everything to 64 kilobit per second MP3s, which is pretty much as low as you would ever want to go for voice. And because of the way our levels are, we didn't realize that, listening to our masters and everything, it sounded pretty good to us, but then one of our listeners told us one day that in the car, we sound like 2 robots killing each other. And those are basically the artifacts from encoding something to an MP3, or in Skype's case, what Skype uses to compress the audio to send it across. The best solution, in terms of encoding, you can't do much about Skype, because Skype changes how it encodes depending on your bandwidth. So there's nothing you can do about that except buy more bandwidth. In terms of dealing with the fact that they sound bad, the best thing you can really do is have them on 2 separate tracks and then do a separate set of filters to the bad sounding one to try to smooth it out a little.
Yeah, also, if 2 guys sound bad and 2 guys sound fine, there's probably something wrong with their end. Maybe they have a sound card with a lot of noise on it. Maybe they didn't set their levels properly.
Well, I think it sounds like his problem is very specifically an encoding issue.
Yeah.
Because that kind of noise really only comes up when you're compressing something. All right.
Oh, so you're making the MP3 before you upload. You should probably upload all the waves and then combine them and make an MP3.
You never want to transcode anything. Real briefly, in case anyone isn't fully aware of this, there are 2 ways, always 2. You can encode audio losslessly, like in FLAC, or essentially a WAV file where it's perfect, or in MP3 where it's small because it's lossy. Information is destroyed. If you encode something to MP3, some information is lost. If you encode that to an MP3 again, more is lost. So if you encode to MP3, upload it, and then he makes an MP3 from that, that is probably where almost all of your problems are coming from. Yeah, especially if he's using a bitrate less than 96.
It's just like if you ever use Photoshop, you want to do everything in the PSD format that is completely lossless until the very last minute you make your JPEG or your PNG or your GIF. It's the same thing. You want to keep everything as a WAV file, or if you're using an Apple, they have those lossless AIF files, whatever they're called. You want to make everything, lossless until the very last minute you make your MP3 or your AAC. Anyone else? We're almost out of time, so.
I had a question about the new video podcasts. I know you guys aren't too involved, but I'm guessing that you know more than most.
We've been debating doing it, and the only limiting factor is money at this point. The only video podcast I watch is Ask a Ninja.
Yeah, I listen to the audio podcast because while I work, I'm a computer programmer, so I can sit and work and listen at the same time. If it was a video podcast, I'd have to stop working.
Yeah, I work in the Bronx, and I live an hour north of it, so I drive to work an hour one way every day. I can listen to podcasts in the car just fine. I can't watch a movie in the car. Well, I can, but it's probably not a good idea. But video podcasting is really, I don't think, going to take off soon because it's really just the barrier to entry and the amount of effort. You've got blogging, podcasts, videocasts, and blogging, the barrier to entry is really small. Blogs are free. All you have to do is type whenever. It takes almost no effort. Just type whatever you want. Audio, now you need all this equipment. You need to learn about audio. You need to actually sit down and record the audio, usually late at night when I need to go to bed because I work in the morning. Pardon me. And you have to worry about the noise in the room and all that. Video, now you also have to worry about lighting, about bandwidth, about makeup, about all these other things, and it becomes an exponentially increasing amount of effort.
Yeah, with audio, the MP3 is going to work on everyone's computer pretty much. If you use video, you got to worry about the MPEG-4s, the what's it called, the H.264s, and the iPod formats, the PSP formats, the DivX, the XVID. There's so many different video formats, the QuickTime, the Windows Media. It's really just a pain in the butt.
I think maybe give it 3 or 4 years, video podcasting as bandwidth increases, as long as, the internet isn't made up of a series of tubes, then...
Yeah, as digital cameras get cheaper and as Google turns on more dark fiber, you're going to see a lot more video podcasting. All right, I think we're out of time anyway.
We're not out of time just yet. We got to wind down.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more questions. I guess at this point, everyone who does a podcast, come on up here and we'll yell and scream and maybe someone will take a picture.
Make a line.
Come on up. As long as you actually do a podcast, I'll know if you're lying. I'll know. Oh, and there are no freaking clown pistols allowed up here. Good God.
Oh, we should pimp ourselves first.
Oh, yeah. Once again, I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights.
FrontRowCrew.com.
We got flyers for everyone.
Yeah, we do. We have a flyer. So if you want to actually listen to our show, if you thought we were at all entertaining, we'll give you a flyer. Just come up and see us after the show.
Yeah, and we would talk in depth about our show, but that's not really what this panel is about, at least this year.
Yeah, we do 4 shows a week. There's technology, then games, then anime, and then every other geeky thing in the world. So no matter what kind of geek you are, at least one day a week, you'll like our show.
Now,
hopefully.
The first other podcast we ever met was right here, our friends at Anime World Order, who interviewed me at Katsucon last year.
Here, pimp yourself.
Hey, I'm Daryl Surratt. I'm the one who assassinated Raymond Scott last night. What? Boo! What? Yeah, we're the people who don't know anything about audio engineering or web hosting or anything, but we do know about anime. So, if we can do this, any of you idiots can. Oh, did I say idiots? Whatever. This is my co-host, Gerald. Say hello.
Hi.
All right, then. But yeah, you might have seen us obnoxiously carpet bombing this place with flyers. Or not. Yeah, check the show out, and then check out these other people as well. I'll move them like this way, because it's closer.
Yeah, go down that way first.
Hi, I'm Aaron, and this is Noah, and we're the Ninja Consultant Podcast. We've been around for about a year, so after a year, we finally figured out how to use, microphones and mixers and stuff. So now it sounds pretty good, so if you haven't listened in a long time, you should check it out. And some guy offered to build this webpage, so the webpage also looks pretty good. I really recommend the Anime World Order podcast. They're pretty awesome. They came out, last December or something. We've got other people here, too. You want to say something?
Most of our listeners are 5th graders, so...
They're either 5th graders and junior high kids or parents.
So if you are a 5th grader or no 5th graders, I understand that 5th graders like our podcast.
Hi, I'm Joel White from Fast Karate for the Gentleman.
Hey, I'm Dave Riley. You can find us at daveandjoel.com. It's the podcast all about kung fu ass kicking.
And cartoons.
How's everyone doing? I'm Alan. My podcast is Otakon Generation, and we've been doing it for about a year, and Daryl contributes a lot, so get to hear his voice quite a bit. And we're pretty old school. I'm the only one represented out of the 10, 15 of us that normally do our podcast every week, and because they're all lame, they have something else life to do or something like that. Actually, I think it's Otakon has burned them out completely. So, and since we're old school, we're all old guys, so they can't get out of their rocker chairs that come to Otakon. So,
yeah. I'm Marcus Noble. I host.
You were the loser. You totally ruined our perfect streak of no feedback.
See, I didn't really warn him, but you learn a lot about audio, and the first thing you'll learn when you start doing live shows anywhere is that you never walk in front of those big things because they'll hurt you.
I'm Marcus Noble. I host the Skunk Smells podcast. Basically, I spend about a half hour of my Saturday playing some of the pod-safe music that I like and ranting about stuff that annoys me about life. If you're interested, feel free to check it out, skunksmells.libsyn.com.
All right, cool. We'll go down this side.
Use your microphone this time.
Okay.
AKA our lovely assistant, Nuri.
Okay. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Hi, I'm Nuri. Hi, I'm Michelle. We do a podcast called Artist Alley for artists and commissioners. So if you're either one, come up to us later. We'll interview you right here at the convention. Listen to Rim and Scott's show. They're awesome.
My name's Devin. I'm also known as Maver Online. I host tgpservers.org, which is a free TeamSpeak hosting for gamers that need a TeamSpeak and stuff like that. Pretty much we just get online and make fun of people and each other. And we've only come out with one episode, but we are trying to get into the video podcasting.
Hey, I'm Spada. I'm a host of the TF Wire podcast. We're the one and only Transformers podcast online. We've been going on for about a year. Right now we're in a 3-week hiatus so we can actually regain our sanity. But we're at tfwire.com. Give us a listen. Just don't listen to us in the car.
Yeah, that's something else I guess we should point out is that there are a lot of podcasts covering weird things, like I said, Australian real estate, but there are a lot of things that there isn't a podcast for them. Like I don't think, there's no podcast about like Lensman or
Yeah,
so,
if you know something, if there's something you're an expert at, there's something you're passionate about, you could do a podcast so easily, and anyone else, it's a great way to meet people who are interested in the same weird things you're interested in. I mean, my favorite podcast, other than Geeknights right now, that I listen to, is called 12 Byzantine Emperors. And it's just this guy talking about 12 emperors from the ancient empire of Byzantine and Byzantium and all that.
which is actually Rome, which I just learned.
And I just like to say that podcasting seems to be starting to take off. I mean, last year at Otakon, there was practically no podcasting. Now we've got all of these podcasts here, and even though it's 10 a.m. on Sunday, next year there's probably going to be twice as many. There's probably going to be a podcasting party that I'm sure all of us will have something to do with, and I'm sure there will be some sort of trouble occurring.
Clown pistol related. So.
The fact that he yelled "Sic Semper Tyrannis" before he shot me.
All right, I think we're running out of time, so if anyone wants to say anything to us or anyone else up here, we'll be hanging out after the panel.
If anyone wants to see our equipment, we can explain in great detail in ways that I didn't want to bore the rest of you with exactly how we do all that stuff.
All right. Yes, and you can also pick up flyers to all of our podcasts to get our URLs, because I know you're going to forget by the time you get home and sleep overnight and all that good stuff. So thank you for coming. Everyone here is awesome. Everyone not here is not awesome.
And I just would like to plug, if you have nothing to do today and you've never been to them before, go to the closing ceremonies and if you can, the feedback session. They're very good at Otakon.
Yeah, the feedback session is now.
Yeah, and the closing ceremonies, they usually show all the winning AMVs in case you missed the AMV contest.
Hooray.
Oh, then your winner is you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
They showed him in the iron.
And that was Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for our opening theme.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com. If you like our podcasts, you'll love our forums. Make sure you visit them. You can send your email feedback to geeknights@gmail.com. And if you want, you can leave us a voicemail at 206-333-1537.
Geeknights airs every weeknight, Monday through Thursday.
Geeknights is recorded with absolutely no studio and no audience. But unlike those other talk shows, it's actually recorded at night.